Scratch and Sniff.
Perhaps most gallingly, recently I got asked, will that be all, sir? Whilst buying only tampons. Don't forget, journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Which is why H is always knackers. Ian Beale. His dead eyes. His shit hair. His greying food hygiene cap. Incorrectly assumes he sports at a jaunty angle.
Shiny new stand-up comedian on the block, Thea Downie there, with her own unique brand of hijinks, mirth and titatastic banter. Well, we at SNS Towers couldn't resist adding another stand-up sensation to our glamorous and indeed eclectic menagerie of guests. So stand by your pumps, put loads of salt in some of these tea in the name of comedy, and let all your hairs hang out. You're listening to SNS Online. So Thea, I guess first question, how did you get into stand-up?
Well, Nick, I saw a friend do it. He decided to, and I went along to a couple of his gigs, and he always seemed to be head and shoulders better than everyone else.
Okay.
Not just because he was my mate. And it was really as simple as, if he can do that, I might be able to.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And I got more interested in it. And then a colleague of mine was also interested in doing stand-up, so I just decided to book myself on a course.
Right, that lit the fire.
Yeah.
So what was the course like?
The course was great. It wasn't, there's a rather well-known one run by Logan Murray, but it wasn't that one.
Yes, I've been on the same course.
Oh, really?
Look where it got me.
Oh, really? He's good, yeah. I think he lets you kind of explore your inner funny. Whereas, I'm going to name it. It was the London comedy course run by a chap called Harry Denford, who was just really a...
Harry Denford? Never heard of him. Okay. I'm sure he's lovely.
He's big in jonglers.
Oh, hello.
Yes. Yeah, not to
be sneezed at.
circuit. No, not at all. So he just gave... it was 6 weeks, 3 hours a week, and it was pretty intensive, and we were a small course because it wasn't prime time. And, Harry Denford was brilliant at helping you collate enough for a good 5 minutes. And the first lesson was one of the most interesting, because you had to stand up and nobody knew who you were, and they had to guess whether or not you were gay, straight, single, married, nice or not nice, which I quite liked. Yeah, it was good. And I got not sure about gay or straight, not sure about single or married, not nice.
So you're not officially not nice?
I'm officially comedically not nice.
Okay.
Which I was rather pleased about, funnily enough.
I can dispute that, having known you for quite a long time, but there we go.
You're too kind.
Yeah.
But no, I thought that would allow me to do a bit more with the persona. And by the end of it, he took away the fear of it by saying that there was a showcase event at the end of these 6 weeks, and he said, I really care about the reputation of my course, and if you're not funny, I'm not going to let you go on stage. So that was great. So the worst that could happen was you'd have to tell 50 people, I'm terribly sorry, it's all off. But
that's just your safety net. I'd rather sort of stop there than die in every way possible on stage.
Exactly, yeah.
Which I've done many times. I mean, obviously, we've both been on the stand-up comedy course. I seem to remember that there were lots of sort of warm-up exercises which really do require you to sort of think outside the box to get you in that zone. The main example I can remember, we did loads, but it was years ago. There's one person who's going to jump off a cliff, and the other person has to talk him down. Or we discover more about these two people, or who knows, the second person might push the first one off the cliff at the end of it. Yeah. But that's your scenario, and you can pretty well go anywhere with something like that. Was it similar to Logan Murray's method in that respect?
No, there were a few where you were just supposed to get very emotional. It was basically kind of through medium of dance you were supposed to express jokes.
Through the medium of dance.
It was, honestly, you had to kind of contort yourself, and I was rubbish at that. That was more one for people with an acting background. But mainly it was things like, he gave us all a joke before we started that we had to tell in our own way. And we all kind of, I remembered giving it a political spin and feeling quite pleased with myself. And he went, yeah, I know you think you're middle class and clever, don't you? But what you've done there is add 400 words to a joke that needs 20. He was really hot on kind of tight writing, which is very useful.
Get the red marker pen out, as
That's
they say.
it, yeah. Or just rip it all up. One of the things he got us to do was look up proverbs and then kind of make puns on them, which is quite fun. Yeah. It's sort of it's a known thing to do. And he said when you're starting out, people don't know who you are. You have to address how you appear. So to do the kind of classic, I know what you're thinking. I look like the love child between. I'm stealing my friend's joke, but the love child of Mr. and Mrs. Downie, which is my surname. Unfortunately, it was a loveless marriage. So,
Okay.
That's someone else's joke.
Yeah,
but, Yeah, so sort of standard things. And it was a lot about, it was about microphone technique as well. So move the mic away from you, because you still do see a lot of people who have been going for a couple of years will leave the mic kind of in front of them and in the audience's eye line. And also he talks about trying to dominate the stage, so being on the front foot, which again is something useful if it's going badly, to kind of remember to try and, you're in control on the stage.
Attack is the best form of defence. And obviously, I guess you do deal with heckles as well?
No, I've only ever had people sort of asking me to extrapolate on something. But I kind of ambient sounds, so sirens and things, always acknowledge them.
Who are your stand-up heroes and indeed heroines?
Oh, well, it's quite cheesy.
Cheese away, my darling.
It really is Louis C.K., I think, just because of his honesty. Obviously your Milton Joneses and your Tim Vines, they've got wonderful wordplay, which is a delight.
Absolutely.
And really tickles me. And there are lots of very clever people like that. And Ross Noble's he's a glorious surrealist.
He's quite bonkers, isn't he?
He is bonkers, and I can't, I admire his fizzing mind so much. But CK's kind of, I don't think he is actually that honest, but he appears to be. He really kind of eats his heart out, gets very angry. There's a lot of kind of interesting and thoughtful self-loathing, loathing for society. But I find him very engaging. Maria Bamford she's A, very funny, not to everyone's taste, but B, she has quite serious mental health problems, unwanted thought syndrome, and she's very articulate about that. And very funny. I mean, I think by and large I enjoy female comics. I mean, Amy Schumer's great, another kind of honest one.
I think I do as well. I don't know if that's because I'm a screaming whoopsie or just because I find women. I just find some of the male comedians that can be quite sort of heavy-handed, and particularly if it's your male heterosexual of a certain age, you're going to be ticking off cars, sex. I mean, obviously there are so many different ways to do that, but I find I warm to people more like Eddie Izzard, who will go off on tangents and will be rather beautiful and sweet, as well as totally bonkers.
No, I mean, he was a huge hero. I mean, in fact, I sort of, it's weird because you still see people. I still saw somebody at an open mic thing the other day using a very old bit of his material, but I used to know all of his specials kind of absolutely off by heart. And, my sister and I would...
Cake or death, cake or death.
Cake or death, yeah. But he introduced a kind of a very distinctive cadence that then a lot of people ripped off, which is sort of tantamount to his influence, I suppose. Yes. Who else? Kathy Griffin, she's very funny. It's an interesting one because I don't know that people necessarily... I mean, Bill Hicks was wonderful. A mate introduced me to him when I was 20. In the same way that you always remember people who introduced, your great musical heroes like Tom Waits or what have you, I'll be forever grateful to her. I mean, your Richard Pryors and your Lenny Bruces and that, for some reason they didn't speak to me, and I think stand-up comedy has to really talk to you, and otherwise it's not going to work.
No, absolutely. I mean, is there anybody... I mean, obviously you're trying to find your own style, your own voice and all the rest of it, but, I mean, are there any pointers from some of the greats that you admire that, you would like to take aspects of, if possible, but to morph it into your own reality?
I think just watching... I'm not sure about the greats so much, but...
Well, what works for you, basically.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, when you're at my kind of, slimy entry-level stage, it's rather wonderful because I've been doing it
Not at all.
No, but I've been really doing it more off than on for 2.5 years. So you see people that you sort of start in the same kind of year, if you like, and you see their confidence growing. And I think just stage time just gives you legs, gives you range, whether kind of physically or the sort of things that you're prepared to explore and what you can get a laugh out of. And I find, in some senses, people kind of 3 to 4 rungs above me in experience, doing a kind of solid 10, 15, I find them very informative. Whether it be carrying off a song or seeing people who were originally quite boxy, for them to kind of break out into a more physical element. That's the sort of thing I aspire to. Watching a Bill Burr special or something, it's like, I don't know. I mean, it's like watching a Kenneth Branagh when you've just done your sixth form one-act play or something.
Yeah. So tell us about some of the gigs you've done and the highlights, and if you can handle it, the lowlights as well.
Yeah. Death.
Death.
Well, the first gig was wonderful. You weren't there, were you? I didn't.
No, I have. I've seen it on YouTube, and it was hilarious.
Thank you.
When I was 6, I wanted to be Batman, the costume. When I was 12, I wanted to be Wolverine. Claws. When I was 15, I wanted all the other girls to stop calling me Dave. Get along with the other girls nowadays, fine, which is really great. Apart from fat girls. Just the fat girls that need you to lie to them. I didn't realise for many years that there's an established call and response that runs. Fat girl, I'm looking really fat. Correct reply, no you're not, you're looking lovely at the moment. Are those new earrings? Not knowing that, I would just give them an affirmative nod.
Well, it was the warmest crowd. I mean, that was the other thing that old Harry said, that it will be the best gig you have for at least 6 months, even if you gig constantly. And that it was, because you've got 50 of your closest friends, really...
And you pay them a £5 each.
Yeah, well, no, they...
No, I'm joking.
They paid, God bless them, to sweat out to Greenwich. So everyone... And we were on quite late, so everyone's sort of nicely oiled and just willing you to do well.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing worse than seeing a mate just, do intentionally badly. So no, that was wonderful. We were all absolutely flying. I didn't get to sleep till at least 3 a.m. or something.
Fantastic.
Which
fantastic.
was, really a really wonderful night. Since then, I had a lovely one. There's a very nice gig with a waiting list run by the wonderful Barry Ferns in Islington, the Camden Head. And my first one there, it was great, man. They just, it was probably the first time and last time that I really felt as though I kind of owned the laughter. It's only really happened that once. That was great.
It's almost like an instinctive feeling of force, isn't it? When it's all going.
It was a bit, yeah. No, it was. I just sort of got on stage, and it all just kind of went my way for some reason.
And just to say, I'm speaking from other people's experience, not my own.
And bad ones. I mean, I had it's an odd one because it is really subjective. I've had 2. I mean, you get ones where you're just sort of ending up playing to 2 other bored comics, which I don't really count. But in terms of like losing an audience, that's happened 3 times really. And if it's a really, really tough crowd, you're not supposed to blame the audience. But if you're seeing, an MC who's been going for 20 years getting nothing, then you don't feel that bad if they're not really reacting to what you're doing. But I've had a few where my first death, the MC, as I left the stage, he said, "Yeah, now we've got a woman who's actually funny." which was...
Oh, that's so cruel.
It was a bit harsh.
That's pretty naughty.
Yeah, I didn't like him.
No, I don't like him either.
Thanks. But I mean, oddly, I had a video of it, and it seemed all right. The jokes weren't that bad. And then I had one about 6 weeks ago that put me off for a while. But again, finally listened back to it, and it was okay. So it is very subjective as to whether or not you killed it or
Absolutely.
Died a death.
Well, tag my toe. I'm on the slab, aren't I?
Scratch and sniff. with Nick Randell.
So where do you see it going then? Because obviously you're doing another job as your proper job at the moment. It's not in stand-up comedy, so I believe.
No, but that's correct. I work for the BBC. Feel very fortunate to do so. It's
God bless them.
God bless them. I would really like to make more of it, and encouraging friends such as yourself have said I should kind of keep at it, and a couple of other comics. I sort of, even when I'm not doing that well with the audience, the comics are quite sweet and say they like my writing. So I think there's something there to build on. But
it's all in the text, isn't it? So I mean, that's where it starts from.
A lot of it can be, although,
and looking at yourself in the mirror for over and over again.
That's right, with the hairbrush. Although I find it quite hard to write new stuff, and every time I book a gig in a couple of weeks, I think, I'll have a whole new 5 minutes by then, and then, predictably, I'll try maybe half a new joke per gig. So I'm not very prolific. Some people are writing constantly, but also it's a bit like sort of, I believe, going to the gym or being in any kind of athletic training. People are taking it seriously, do kind of 3 to 5 gigs a week or more. There's a doubling up is when you do 2 gigs a night, when you're getting good and in demand. But to do that, you really do have to kind of say goodbye to your mates, for a year.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'm not quite prepared to do that. But having said that, if you're not gigging that much, you just don't keep the kind of the learning momentum.
But does the excitement of getting into comedy and coming up with ideas that are genuinely funny get your mind percolating to the point where you might wake up in the middle of the night and think, oh my God, that's brilliant, and you've got a notebook and pen or something or not?
Well, this is what distinguishes me from proper comics, Nick, is that not at the moment. Certainly on the course I was, because that was very much what I was focused on at the time. Yes, and then for quite a few months afterwards. But now I sort of turn around these slightly esoteric ideas. I had one about how I wasn't a proper fan and maybe men are better fans than women, but it wasn't. There was a kind of kernel of an idea, but there were, as my friend said, where are the jokes? I was like, well, I don't.
But there's a lot of potential in something like that because there's so many geeky people in the world now. I mean, geek is cool and women are geeks and all the rest of it. So
that's true.
A lot to explore.
There are lots. I mean, I think
throw in a bit of sexism. I don't know.
Yeah. Why not? A bit of casual everyday sexism.
A warm custard and a gym slip. Sorry, I'm getting carried away.
Oh, hello.
You should be a double actor, Thea. Oh gosh.
Yes. No, we need to punch up, not punch down.
Absolutely.
So no, not at the moment. But I think again, it's quite a kind of mental shift to go, this is all that I'm doing, and you have to kind of keep it front and foremost. I saw an interview it was an Imagine about stand-up comedy, and a lot of comics were asked when they're prepping for their Edinburgh hour-long shows, how do they think about it? And they all kind of to a man or woman said they just start looking at everything and going, oh, microphones, they're funny, aren't they? They're bouncy. Oh, studio walls. And PCs, hilarious, so square. And they just their mind has to kind of switch into that permanently for at least 2 months before they start.
So Thea, as well as performing comedy, you're also promoting other people's comedy. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I had a friend at work was organising a fundraising night, and she asked me, because I know a lot of comics, if I'd like to put together some people to come and perform. So for one night only, I was a promoter for nothing. But it's great, you just say fundraiser. It was, in fact, for a play that she'd written. So not for a charity proper, if you like. But that was really interesting because it was all done in a kind of a day's flurry on Facebook because the comedy world tends to operate on Facebook. In fact, I had to come back onto Facebook after having left it in high dudgeon after having done the comedy course because you can't get gigs otherwise, mainly. So I was really delighted because basically there are a lot of really nice people out there who are really good, and I asked somebody for a few recommendations. I obviously knew a few people that I really liked and really rated, but it was just quite collegiate. People were recommending friends. I had 2 lovely comics travel from Brighton, David Jordan and Nadia Dahl. They were well lovely. Done. Thank you. Yeah, they were. It
was like giving birth, that wasn't it?
Really, almost there. But that was fun. But but it's a strange feeling because you feel not only not only responsible for whether or not the audience is having a good time, but also for whether or not the comics feel as though it was worth their time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because a lot of these guys, they're winning kind of radio awards, New Acts of the Year awards. They're all done or doing really well. No, I found it to be a kind of very soft and fluffy experience. I do have enormous respect for the people who just kind of, week in, week out, will put on these shows for free, and there's just a lot of chasing. I mean, mine was a small bill. I think it ended up being 9 acts, and just kind of getting everybody to the right place on time. People want to know about the running order and where they're going. So I think if I didn't already have enormous kind of hats off feelings towards people who do this just for the love of it, then I do now.
I think there's an awful lot of goodwill that is required and is genuinely needed to be given and is expected generally in the industry, not just in stand-up comedy. I think most of my creative career has been for free.
Yes, that's right.
I'm sure it will continue to be. But... Well, obviously, bear in mind, Thea, that one of our previous guests, Helen Arney, was on a stand-up comedy course run by Logan Murray, and now she's everywhere. She's, doing stuff on Radio 4 and with Robin Ince and all the rest of it. So clearly, it's just a matter of sticking to it. What would you say to people listening if they want to get into stand-up comedy?
I would say that I found a course not to be cheesy and to be very helpful. People have all sorts of kind of opinions about it on the circuit. Sodom, really. Do the course if you've got the money to spare and if you need that propulsion, or just get up and find an open mic night. If you happen to live in London, you're very fortunate because there are lots and lots of places that you can go and just turn up. That's great. It's not as scary as it sounds. It really isn't, actually. And also, once you've done it and it's gone well, you just feel excellent and you'll just want to chase that. Mainly, some advice I got from somebody else was absolutely true. It's just about stage time. It's just stage time. There's no shortcut to it. A friend compared it to kind of flight hours for a pilot. And it's
yes, yeah, absolutely.
And you're never going to get good unless there's a kind of magic number around 100 gigs, but just kind of constantly gigging is the advice that I would give your listeners and myself to do very well, because you'll get the polish there. And a lot of things that happen on stage, you'll find that jokes mutate and work in a way that you're just never going to get on paper.
So, Thea, thank you so much for joining us on Scratch the Sniff tonight. It's gratefully appreciated. Obviously, we've had a very good tradition of stand-up comedy on the show, so it's nice to grab somebody at the start of their career. And we had you on. So,
really
and,
sweet.
of course, you get your celebrity goodie bag, as all the celebrities get. So, Thea Downie, thank you so much.
Thank you too very much.